life should always be put into music, because it is a drama, or it is a comedy. These are live people, or supposedly. So we can't go away from life.
In the first of the talks we had together, Maria Callas discussed her approach to opera in general, its relevance to contemporary outlook, the attitude of the young singer and the experienced singer towards the art he or she loves. In this, the second program, she discusses some of the roles she's made most conspicuously her own. Violetta, La Traviata, Norma, of course, Tosca, the last she sang in public to date, Carmen, which she's recorded but never tackled on the stage. When you first started your career in Italy, Maria, you really were a straightforward, dramatic soprano, at least in the roles you chose to sing, or perhaps the roles you were asked to sing.
I was always studying, in any case, lighter roles, but mainly for souplesse,
Yes.
you know. But I had already studied Norma, for instance. I was always ready for that. I had studied Traviata, never Lucia, because I never considered it. I never took it into consideration. But I was really considered a dramatic soprano, dramatico coloratura, as they say.
Yes. And when you started to sing them, Puritani, I think, was the first one, wasn't it? The first one you
Yes,
sang in Italy.
that is true.
When you started, when you made a great success in that, did this change your mind a little bit in the scope of your repertoire, or did you always really have it in the back
Yes, I
of your
do come
mind?
back to your question and answer it directly. It's true. I did start off with these heavy roles because generally, and even right now, I'm afraid they don't have dramatic sopranos.
That's true.
So they either have dramatic sopranos who don't have high notes, who don't have the elasticity, the coloratura. Once upon a time, you just couldn't sing without. So, of course, as you say, I had to accept certain roles just to make a career. And like I did Turandot in my very early years in Italy. But as soon as I could stop singing that, I did.
You were happy
because, well, I was happy too, because it's not considered a very good role for the voice, and frankly, also stage-wise, it's a very static role. And when you hear everybody saying it's bad for you, it's best that you listen to the majority.
That didn't apply to Wagner, though.
No.
Or did it?
No. Wagner could never hurt your voice if you know how to sing well.
Yes.
If you don't push the sound further, because frankly, you should never push the sound. You should always sing lightly and within the note.
But that you enjoyed singing, didn't you? The
Oh, yes.
Brunhilde and
Yes,
Isolde?
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
It was a great experience. Though I always sang them in Italian, because then in Italy they couldn't accept German roles, Wagner rather, but only in Italian.
Yes.
As you well know, even in Bologna, until lately, I don't know now, they just don't accept, they consider Wagner rather heavy and difficult to understand. But I enjoyed Wagner a lot. It was a great help to later roles.
The thing I haven't asked you, and obviously should have done before, is whether you had parallel to your bel canto training, your vocal training, whether you had acting training and movement training, but training.
Yes.
Of course, you learned how to do it. That's
Actual acting training, no. I have had from Elvira de Hidalgo movement training.
Also from your singing teacher.
Exactly.
That's,
and mainly from her.
that's the most valuable of all, because that's
That is
conceived
most
from
valuable.
music, of course.
I was taught then, I'm talking about 14 years old, the flowing, continuous flowing of a movement, which in other words was stupidly done, but in any case, it was always this movement,
Yes.
exercises of
Yes.
this kind of
Yes.
movement,
Yes.
which means freedom of this also, and how to fall down, which is not easy at all.
No, and rather important.
And I promise you, it was really something to laugh at. You, to learn how to fall well, and you can't always fall the same way, you have to completely relax yourself and forget how you're going to fall. Because if you, a slight tenseness, then you hurt yourself. And, well, then also you have to learn how, and how would this woman fall, and how would that woman fall. It's catalogued with many
That, of course,
many
is not
ways.
only technique, is it? Then
That is yourself.
Exactly, you've acquired
But you
the technique.
see, you learn how to act. That is one step there. You have to face the public there, and you have to turn this way. But once you learn these things, then you forget about them. And then you manage to free yourself of these, and even go against rules of acting, if you can get away with it.
If you can, yes, if you...
If you can
If
get
you've
away
got the
with
technique
it.
and if you
If
can
you've
get
got
away
the
with it.
technique, if you've got the personality especially,
Certainly.
to be able to overcome these things. It's not at all that easy, and these things cannot be improvised unless you have a terribly good and old training. In other words, since you were a child. You're
So that
broken
it's second
into
nature,
this.
really.
It's become second nature. In fact, what you learn becomes second nature. And what you keep on learning always goes hand in hand with what you've learned. But you keep on learning all the time. But the basic is, in other words, a dancer learns how to exercise. He has to go through his exercises to learn how to dance. This is exactly what happens in
Yes.
singing. Very carefully thought out, not only with you, but with many other ears, with your
course.
conductor,
Yeah.
with your stage director, with the maestro sostituto, and with your own work after
Maestro
that.
sostituto, the operatic
With the-
coach, who is
yes, that's
an
right.
expert on operas,
Yes.
but not necessarily
Well,
a
he
great
teaches you,
performer.
coaches you the role before you reach the conductor.
And he really
It's a
knows about all
long-term
the
job.
background of all these
Yes,
things.
and you
Should
have
do.
to have a lot of courage to take his advice, because usually the greater you become, the less you
Yes,
you
true.
want to know, and you just say, well, never mind, I don't take that. No, you have to, unfortunately, brace yourself and say, well, what was wrong? What is that? And sometimes you get very angry with yourself, mainly, not with the others, because I would always have loved to foresee these things before. I should have thought of it before. Isn't it terrible? It's called pride or conscientiousness. So you also on stage, you grow into habits like hanging on to words. For instance, if you say casta diva, you can't, if you speak casta diva, you can't say casta diva. Or you sing the same way. You can't say casta diva che in argenti. On stage, you get into these bad habits. You
Yes.
accent the last
Yes.
consonant.
The High Priestess in Bellini's opera Norma is the touchstone, as it were, of the classical 19th century repertory. The scene is ancient Gaul, and the heroine loves an officer of the occupying Roman power, has indeed 2 children by him. The opera story concerns his love for a younger priestess and Norma's great act of forgiveness, which amounts to nothing less than an anticipation of Wagner's theory of redemption through love. You mentioned Norma, and in a way, outside, we've always thought of this as being not only your role number 1, but the whole of your early career leading up to this role. I think that's partly true.
I prefer Norma also as a character, because I don't say she resembles to me, or maybe yes in a certain way. I mean, she's very strong, very ferocious at times,
Yes.
and actually she really is not. She's very
She's got great powers of forgiveness, at
yes,
least.
and forgiveness.
And nobility.
So, in other words, she just roars like a lion, but actually she's not.
When you start Norma, Maria, when you prepare for the recitative and the great aria of Casta Diva, what is Norma about? What is this eventually very strong and powerful woman, this priestess? What is she about at that moment?
About that moment, well, you see, when you study a role also, you know what she is, what she starts in the beginning, or in the and where she ends. So the beginning is, frankly, according to my psychology, and of course also to Seraphine's, who was my then first conducted